From coast to coast, unlock adventure at Red Lion Hotels by Sonesta, where restful sleep, friendly service, and local knowledge await. Whether for business or pleasure, spend less and make more of every trip. When you sign up for the Sonesta Travel Pass, you'll get their best rates instantly. Go to Sonesta.com to book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Saks Off Fifth. Up to 70% off every day. Spring is in full swing here at Saks Off Fifth, with so many exciting trends to try. From matching sets and floral dresses to wide-leg jeans and chic accessories, find all of the season's must-have styles. Plus, shop new designer arrivals weekly. Find Gucci, Valentino Garavani, Versace, Stuart Weitzman, and more. Head to SaksOffFifth.com or a Saks Off Fifth store near you for up to 70% off every day.
You're listening to DNA ID, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Citizen Detective, and Campus Killings. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
On August 3, 1986, at around 5 p.m., 3 residents of Cleveland, Texas, were on the shores of Crater Lake near FM 3083 and Exxon Road in the Four Corners area of Montgomery County. The trio was revisiting their old hangout when they saw something floating just under the surface of the murky water. It looked like a person. They called the police after driving to a phone and led Montgomery County deputies and fire department personnel to the lake. It was the body of a man, partially submerged in the water. When he was pulled to shore by firemen using a boat, they saw that his body had been weighted down by 2 large construction cinder blocks tied to his body with electrical cord. Decomposition gases had caused his body to swell and become buoyant despite the cinder blocks, which were presumably intended to prevent him from ever being found. The dead man had a visible gunshot wound to the head from what appeared to be a small caliber gun. Deputies searched the pockets of his jeans for any identification, but there was none. No personal items were found other than what was on his body. He was bagged up for autopsy and sent to the medical examiner's office in adjacent Harris County, because back in those days Montgomery County didn't have its own. The autopsy revealed that the John Doe had been shot twice and was dead when he was put into the water. He had a gunshot wound in his back and a gunshot wound to the back of his head. The weapon was confirmed to be a small caliber handgun. The man had no other evident wounds, and it was impossible to know what the circumstances of the shooting were. Detective Fadi Rizk of the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office told me that, of course, he suspects that the gunshot wound to the back was first, because it doesn't make sense to shoot someone in the head and then in the back. But we just don't know whether he saw it coming or whether he had turned his back to someone, was running away, or what. Unfortunately, the John Doe was decomposed to the point of putrefaction. Not only was his face unrecognizable, but he had no fingerprints left for testing. He appeared to have been dead for quite some time, and early articles reported 2 to 3 weeks. But as Detective Rizk and I discussed, that seems too long given that the body was swollen with decomposition gases that drove it to the surface, even with the weight of the cinder blocks. I found an interesting piece in the Explainer column in Slate magazine that laid out why dead bodies tend to float face down. It reads, quote, "A cadaver in the water starts to sink as soon as the air in its lungs is replaced with water. Once submerged, the body stays underwater until the bacteria in the gut and chest cavity produce enough gas, methane, hydrogen sulfide, and carbon dioxide, to float it to the surface like a balloon. The buildup of methane, hydrogen sulfide, and other gases can take days or weeks, depending on a number of factors. At first, not all parts of the body inflate the same amount. The torso, which contains the most bacteria, bloats more than the head and limbs. The most buoyant body parts rise first, leaving the head and limbs to drag behind the chest and abdomen. Since arms, legs, and the head can only drape forward from the body, corpses tend to rotate such that the torso floats face down with arms and legs hanging beneath it." End quote. As for when the body would rise to the surface, as the Slate article said, you heard, it depends on a number of factors. This is from the New York Times, quote, "Putrefaction is slower in water than in air, slower in seawater than in fresh water, and slower in running water than in stagnant water. The main factor determining the rate, however, is temperature. The colder it is, the slower the decay. A body in deep, cold water may never surface." End quote. Of course, the weight of the body would be a factor too, and in this case, the body was weighted down. But from what I've read, and I think I can say generally, not accounting for each of these factors I just discussed, bodies tend to surface within a week. But you've heard how there's no way to know exactly how long that takes. It's by definition an inexact science. So they could not know and did not know when John Doe got put into the water at Crater Lake. The Harris County Medical Examiner's Office made the following documented observations about John Doe's physical attributes. He was a white male between 20 and 30 years old. He was about 5 foot 6 inches tall and of slight build, weighing 133 pounds. He had slightly longer, i.e. collar-length, reddish-brown hair. His eye color could not be determined. His left earlobe was pierced. His teeth were in bad shape, with numbers 9 and 11 exhibiting heavy decay and tooth 10 partially rotted away. He was missing 3 wisdom teeth, but tooth number 17 was present. And he had some distinctive tattoos. A professional one on his lower left arm depicting a small devil with a pointed tail, and 2 homemade-looking tattoos, one on his left upper arm that said Baby Dawn, and one on his right upper arm that said Liz. It was presumed that these made reference to people who played important roles in the life of the dead man. There was another clue to who this man was. He was clad in basic but newer Levi's men's jeans, size 30 waist, 31 length, and heavy white athletic socks with no shoes. But he was also wearing a brown short-sleeve button-front shirt with double open pockets and what's referred to as a square tail cut. Inside the shirt collar was a label that read as follows: M-SS 8-0178-25 Wilson. Now, I probably don't need to point out to my American audience that this last name, Wilson, was extremely unhelpful to the investigators. It's one of the top 10 most common surnames in the U.S., and it was not going to help anyone figure out who he was. If the 1986 investigators did any digging into military records and so on, based on the label and the numbering, we really don't know, because they did not create thorough records of their investigative endeavors. For example, we don't know if there was an earring in John Doe's pierced ear. We don't have any documentation of the condition of the socks and whether it looked like the dead man had been forced to walk to the lake in them. Nor do we know how somewhere along the line he possibly became associated with the street name New York Billy. Modern investigators can only surmise that that was the result of a tip that came in, but they just can't be sure because it wasn't documented, or if it was, the records are lost or destroyed.
When you're in HR, it can feel like nothing is easy. From payroll to PTO, from onboarding to benefits, and everything in between. It's a constant juggle of tasks, systems, and spreadsheets. But your HR software? That's the easy part. Meet Bamboo HR. Trusted by over 34,000 companies, it handles all your HR tasks, payroll, benefits, and time tracking, so your team and your company can grow as fast as, well, Bamboo. And Bamboo HR software is actually easy to use. One simple system that pulls all your people data together in one place, so you can ditch scattered systems and wasted hours on tasks that should only take minutes. Because when HR is easier, you can focus on what matters most, your people. HR is hard. Bamboo HR is easy. Ready to simplify all your HR tasks? For a limited time, get a $100 Visa gift card when you complete a free demo at bamboohr.com/gift card. Again, that's bamboohr.com/gift card. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's be honest. Most of us have a love-hate relationship with wired bras. We love the lift, but hate the digging. We love the support, but hate feeling trapped. Well, Knix just changed everything with FreeFlex, a wired bra actually designed to work with your body, not against it. FreeFlex features a revolutionary flexible wire that moves when you move, bends when you bend, and keeps everything exactly where you want it. No poking, no stabbing, no constant readjusting. just freedom to move. It also has a demi-cup shape for a natural lift with a lower neckline that flatters in everything from V-necks to dresses. And because it's from Knix, it's available in sizes for every body. Experience the first wired bra you'll actually want to wear all day. Visit Knix.com for 15% off your order with FreeFlex15. That's KNIX.com, code FreeFlex15 for 15% off. Knix.com.
Let's talk about Crater Lake so listeners can get a sense of the setting where John Doe was found. When I first read about Crater Lake and the party of 3 people hanging out there who found the body, I pictured a scenic recreational lake with boat ramps, water skiers, and sunbathers. I was completely wrong. Crater Lake is near Conroe, Texas, off FM 3083 east of Interstate 45, southeast of Fort Worth. This is from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on how the lake was formed. Quote, "It's 600 feet deep, and like every other lake of any size in Texas except one, it's man-made. But unlike the other artificial lakes in Texas, this one didn't start out to be a lake, and it wasn't made on purpose. It started out as an oil well, Madeley No. 1 of the Kansas Standard Oil Company, smack dab in one of the richest petroleum areas in the state. What happened was in 1933, the thing blew out and caught fire, and resisted all efforts to put it out for 3 months. The well began cratering and spread to 2 other wells, and the whole thing was aggravated by the extinguishing efforts themselves, tons of mud and water and TNT explosions. Finally, Humble Oil Company, now Exxon, came in and drilled in from the side, and then globbed in mud to the inferno. The fire was out, but now there was this very deep hole partially filled with water, and which eventually filled up the rest of the way." End quote. Apparently, the fire raged as high as 150 feet in the air at one point. When it was over, the hole in the ground eventually formed one of the deepest lakes in the region. But rather than being a recreational lake, Crater Lake remained on oil company land and was not open to the public. Locals have posted online that they used to sneak and hang out at the lake as teens, but the police would chase them off and tell them the water was toxic and not for swimming. It was the kind of place Jason Voorhees might emerge out of, dark, creepy, and forbidden. That's because the lake became something of a dumping ground for dead bodies. Some of these bodies were left in remote areas near the no trespassing signs by the lake, but others, like John Doe, were actually put into the water. It was unclear to me how this would actually work in a lake where there are no boats. I wondered, how would someone carry a body weighted down with cinder blocks far enough out in the lake to submerge it where it would never be seen? Do they do the tying up part once the body is in the water and then hurl the cinder blocks in? But then I looked at photos of the lake, which is surrounded by dense foliage and sits about 75 feet from Crater Hill Road. And I realized that it's not very wide. It's maybe 100 feet across at the widest part. But it is very, very abruptly deep. And because it was formed by a blowout, it doesn't taper into the water. From the edge, it gets deep immediately. There is local lore that it is in fact bottomless. You could throw a body in and have it sink right into the depths. However, it still seems to me that it would take at least 2 people to do it properly. 2 people who know what happened to John Doe. The police also wanted to know what happened to John Doe and who the heck he was. They did all the usual things that they could do back in the 80s. They issued alerts to other area agencies based on his clothing and what little they knew about his physical appearance. They issued descriptions of his tattoos to the public. They sent out some bolos. After the investigators had gotten all they could from John Doe, which did not include DNA because it was only 1986, he was buried. I assumed he was put into a pauper's grave in Montgomery County, but no. I was told he was interred in Houston, in a donated plot in a private cemetery, possibly paid for by the funeral home. The important thing was the Montgomery County investigators knew where he was and kept those records for their successors. In 2006, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office formed a cold case squad, which started out with just one detective, tasked with getting a handle on the number of cold cases in the jurisdiction. In 2007, a second detective was added to the unit, and the Sheriff's Office was awarded 2 separate 18-month-long grants from the National Institute of Justice regarding DNA technology being applied to evidence previously collected in cold cases. There was no DNA retained in John Doe's case, but in 2008, the cold case unit got him entered into NamUs as UP4239. This allowed NamUs users from all over the country to compare the description of John Doe to their own missing persons cases. But not much really happened until 2015. That year, there was a push to identify John Doe, and it was recognized that the chances of doing that were slim without DNA. So, Montgomery County Sheriff's Office cold case detectives exhumed his remains and took a sample of bone from which the lab was able to obtain just mitochondrial DNA, which was not usable for CODIS, but could be helpful in direct comparison testing. They also used the Texas Rangers forensic sketch artist to generate reconstructions of John Doe's face from the front and the profile view, which I will post with the show notes. They finally had images of John Doe to work with, and they were posted on the MCSO and Missing Persons websites, along with photos of John Doe's 3 tattoos. And then they reinterred him in his original grave in Houston.
When you're in HR, it can feel like nothing is easy. From payroll to PTO, from onboarding to benefits, and everything in between. It's a constant juggle of tasks, systems, and spreadsheets. But your HR software? That's the easy part. Meet Bamboo HR. Trusted by over 34,000 companies, it handles all your HR tasks, payroll, benefits, and time tracking, so your team and your company can grow as fast as, well, Bamboo. And Bamboo HR software is actually easy to use. One simple system that pulls all your people data together in one place, so you can ditch scattered systems and wasted hours on tasks that should only take minutes. Because when HR is easier, you can focus on what matters most, your people. HR is hard. Bamboo HR is easy. Ready to simplify all your HR tasks? For a limited time, get a $100 Visa gift card when you complete a free demo at bamboohr.com/gift card. Again, that's bamboohr.com/gift card. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's be honest. Most of us have a love-hate relationship with wired bras. We love the lift, but hate the digging. We love the support, but hate feeling trapped. Well, Nix just changed everything with FreeFlex, a wired bra actually designed to work with your body, not against it. FreeFlex features a revolutionary flexible wire that moves when you move, bends when you bend, and keeps everything exactly where you want it. No poking, no stabbing, no constant readjusting, just freedom to move. It also has a demi-cup shape for a natural lift with a lower neckline that flatters in everything from V-necks to dresses. And because it's from Nix, it's available in sizes for every body. Experience the first wired bra you'll actually want to wear all day. Visit Nix.com for 15% off your order with FreeFlex15. That's KNIX.com, code FreeFlex15 for 15% off. Nix.com.
Montgomery County Criminal Investigations Division Detective Fadi Rizk was assigned the Crater Lake John Doe case in 2020. If you've been listening to my show for a while, you'll remember Detective Rizk was the one I worked with on the Laura Purchase case, episode 42. He started by reviewing the entire case file and picking up leads on persons of interest named in there from back in the day, persons related to the New York Billy tip. He worked to rule these people out, and then he was out of leads given the paucity of the case file. But Detective Rizk was fully aware of the powers of forensic genealogy and that the technique could likely be used to identify John Doe. But he also knew that the mitochondrial DNA they had obtained from the 2015 exhumation could not be used to prepare a SNP profile for John Doe. They were going to have to dig him up again and try to obtain a sample of nuclear DNA. In May 2023, the MCSO cold case detectives again exhumed John Doe. This time he wasn't reburied, but remained in the possession of the Montgomery County Forensic Services Department, the agency which provides autopsy services for Montgomery County. A bone sample was selected and sent to Montgomery County-based Othram Labs in the Woodlands outside Houston. Othram was able to obtain a SNP profile from the bone using what it calls its forensic-grade genome sequencing, and also performed the genealogy work in-house. Unfortunately, I have no details about that analysis to share. All I know is that in its report, Othram presented a theory about the identity of Crater Lake John Doe to Detective Rizk. The report suggested that he tried to obtain a DNA sample from a suspected sibling of John Doe named in the report. Detective Rizk told me that he called up Gwen Trainum in California and said, "Do you have a missing brother?" She said yes. Gwen at first did not believe that the description of Crater Lake John Doe was her missing brother. Detective Rizk told her where to find the forensic reconstructions online, and I have to say, I can see why she had trouble recognizing the image as her brother. But she readily agreed to give a DNA sample to the investigators. Kinship testing confirmed it. Gwen was a full sibling to John Doe. Crater Lake John Doe was Clarence Lynn Wilson, born February 18, 1952, to parents Walter E. Wilson and Mary Joyce Lane Wilson. We don't know a heck of a lot about Clarence Wilson. He was born in Arkansas but grew up in Modesto, California, where both his parents had been born in 1931. He had a sister, Gwen, the one whose DNA confirmed his identity. Gwen said that her brother went by the nickname Red because of his reddish hair. Clarence, a.k.a. Red, it seems, had some run-ins with law enforcement. From what I understand, he was arrested on May 5, 1971, when he had just turned 19, for check fraud in San Rafael, California. Then he was nabbed by Los Angeles authorities for burglary on August 25, 1972. On February 7, 1974, he was arrested for 2 counts of receiving stolen property in his hometown of Modesto. Then on March 20, 1975, he was arrested on suspicion of auto theft. An article in the Calusa Sun-Herald says that Clarence Wilson, age 23, and Mark Williams, age 20, both of Modesto, were stopped by 2 highway patrol officers on Interstate 5 near Hahn Road. The car they were in had been reported stolen. And finally, Clarence was arrested by the Houston, Texas Police Department on March 26, 1982, for burglary of a building with intent to commit theft. It's unclear whether Clarence went to prison in Texas for this arrest. Fox 26 Houston reports that his sister, Gwen Trainum, told the news station that her brother disappeared in 1985, but they hadn't reported him missing. Quote, "I called the prison system in Texas, and they said there's no one with that name and social security number," she said. Since his arrest was in 1982, it's possible he had done time and already been released. But why he fell out of contact with his family in 1985 is unknown. He wasn't killed until 1986. The Wilsons went so far as to hire a PI to look for Clarence, but he could not find Gwen's brother, who had a last known address in Texas City. Gwen told Fox 26 that she finally accepted that he didn't want to be found. She thought at the time, quote, "He's out there somewhere in Texas, and if he wants to notify us, he will." Gwen told ABC 13, quote, "We just assumed he was in Texas living his life, and all this time he was dead. It's devastating to know that he was dead for 37 years. We do have some information about Clarence's personal life. This dude liked being married. I say this because he was married 4 times that we know of. Since he was only 34 when he was killed, that's quite an accomplishment. The first marriage found for him was when he was really young. He married Connie Rosser in 1968 in Los Angeles, California. He was just about 16. Then in 1972, he married Teresa Fredericks in Riverbank, California. He got hitched to Teresa Barnett in 1974 in Middleton, California, and finally, he married Liz D. in 1978 in Fredonia, Kansas. Detective Rizk interviewed Clarence's ex-wife, Liz D. She did not have very good things to say about Clarence. She reported that he worked as a truck driver and was into drugs. She divorced him in 1980 after just 2 years of marriage. It's her name that's crudely tattooed on one of Clarence's arms. The other name on his person, Baby Dawn, is his daughter with his first wife, Connie. Detective Rizk has had no luck contacting her. Detective Rizk has said that now he knows who Clarence is, the investigation into who killed him can kick into high gear. He said he will, quote, start picking apart his life. He told me that he learned from Clarence's ex-wife, Liz, that Clarence was mixed up in some pretty bad stuff, presumably the type of stuff that can get you killed. But he can't elaborate because it's an open and active murder investigation. Gwen Trainum wants answers for what happened to her brother. She told Fox 26 Houston that the brutality of his death was the hardest part. She pleaded, quote, if you know something, just come forward and tell what you know, and maybe they can find someone and we can have closure. The homicide investigation into the murder of Clarence Wilson is ongoing. If you know Clarence or have any information, please contact the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Squad at 936-760-5820 or Multi-County Crime Stoppers at 1-800-392-STOP. Thank you to Detective Fadi Rizk for talking with me about this case. Recently, I let listeners know about a new benefit available to them called an AbJack Insider subscription that's available through Apple Podcasts. An AbJack Insider subscription will give listeners ad-free access to every bit of DNA ID content published, both past episodes and future episodes. It will also give you benefits like early access and bonus content. Head over to Apple Podcasts and click on the DNA ID show page or the AbJack Entertainment channel to start a free trial. Thanks for listening to this episode of DNA ID. If you'd like to listen to the show ad-free and help support the show in the process, please head over to patreon.com/DNAID. And if you're interested in some fun DNA ID merch, visit the store at customizedgirl.com/S podcast. To contact the show, please email us at dnaidpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on social media at DNAID Podcast on Instagram, at DNAID Podcast on Twitter, or on Facebook at facebook.com/DNAID Podcast. Finally, if you want to visit our website, go to DNAIDpodcast.com. You'll be able to get all the episodes of the show, leave comments on episodes that I can respond to, and you can even leave voicemails. You'll get all the latest news about the show and important updates. Find links to our social media, merch, and a lot more. It's really your one-stop shop for everything DNA ID. DNA ID is written, researched, and hosted by me, Jessica Betancourt. It's produced by me and Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Music by Connor Betancourt. Check out our other collaborative podcasts, Scene of the Crime, Missing Persons, and Beyond Bizarre True Crime.